Elizabeth, I'm a literary princess. If you're new here, welcome. I'm a 6-year PhD candidate in English literature where they focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today, we are talking about the most wonderful time of the year. No, not talking about Christmas. I am talking about Victober, which stands for Victorian Literature October, and obviously we read Victorian literature in October. This wonderful event is hosted by Katie from Books and Things, Kate Howe, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and Roz from Scally-Dandling About the Books. This is my favorite part of the year. I love Victober because obviously I love Victorian literature. Yes, I get to read it year round, but this means I have a bunch of people to talk about it with. Now, last year was a disappointing Victober for me. I read 4 books. Pretty bad. 2 of them were Victorian. To be fair, one of them was super long. And then 2 were Victorian adjacent because they were nonfiction about Victorian writers. So I want a better year than last year because that made me sad, and I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy in my most favorite time of the year. So I have a very ambitious TBR, once again, as I always do. I have 1 book for each of the challenges, plus some Victober adjacent books. So let's jump in. So first up is one that actually doesn't count for any of the challenges, at least to my knowledge, but it was the runner-up for the group read pick, and we'll talk about the group read in a little bit. This is Dear Brook by Harriet Martineau. This has been on my radar for a very long time. Harriet Martineau is a fairly early woman writer in the Victorian period, very influential, and I've wanted to read it for quite a while, and I decided this year was going to be the year. My library had a copy, and a nice copy. I'm actually rather pleased with this. It's a Virago Modern Classic. But this is chunky. This is 523 pages. Actually, that's not as chunky as I thought it would be. I actually have no idea what this is about other than 2 sisters, so let's read the back. The Grey family live in the tranquil English village of Deerbrook, to which one summer come their distant cousins from Birmingham, Hester and Margaret Ibbotson. The arrival of the recently orphaned cousins causes a sensation in the small community. The 21-year-old Hester has the gift of great beauty and the terrible fault of jealousy, while Margaret, a year her junior, is her inferior in looks, though vastly superior in intelligence and disposition. Finding themselves the object of curiosity, admiration, and pity, they are quickly absorbed into the intricacies of village life. We enter the world of Jane Austen and the Brontes as we watch the 2 sisters fall in love with the 2 most eligible men in Deerbrook. Sounds like a good time to me. So I'm excited to get to this one. A little disappointed I'm not going to be reading it along with everybody for a group read, but that's okay. Next up, we have a book that counts for 3 challenges. 3 birds with 1 stone. The first challenge it counts for is Katie's challenge, which is to read a work of Victorian fiction that plays with form. The second is Marissa's challenge to read a serialized Victorian work. And the third is the group challenge, which is to read something either by Wilkie Collins or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, or both, in honor of Jennifer Brooks and Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, who both very sadly passed away this year. So this book is No Name by Wilkie Collins. I actually was planning on reading this next year. It was not on my 2024 TBR at all. But then when the Victober challenges came out, I was like, well, I should read Wilkie Collins for Jennifer. She loved Wilkie Collins. And then I was like, and also I don't think I have anything else that plays with form readily available. And this does, at least a little bit. There's like letters and logs and stuff. So I think it's just Wilkie Collins doing his usual thing of multiple narrators and multiple different types of narration, which he loves to do and has done in both of the books I've read by him. And then this was originally serialized. And it doesn't say when, but it was serialized. So this is, you know what, we'll read this one too, because why not? Magdalene Vanstone and her sister Nora learn the true meaning of social stigma in Victorian England only after the traumatic discovery that their dearly loved parents, whose sudden deaths have left them orphans, were not married at the time of their birth. Disinherited by law and brutally ousted from Combe Raven, the idyllic country estate which has been their peaceful home since childhood, the two young women are left to fend for themselves. While the submissive Nora follows a path of duty and hardship as a governess, her high-spirited and rebellious younger sister has made other decisions. Determined to regain her rightful inheritance at any cost, Magdalene uses her unconventional beauty and dramatic talent in recklessly pursuing her revenge. Aided by the audacious swindler Captain Wragge, W-R-A-G-G-E, she braves a series of trials leading up to the climactic test. Can she trade herself in marriage to the man she loathes? That sounds really good. Lots of sisters in this Victober, I think. Interesting. I'm excited to get to this one. I have given both of the books I've read by Wilkie Collins 5 stars. Those were The Moonstone and The Woman in White. So I have very high expectations for this one. And I don't think he'll disappoint me. Next up is another one that counts for Marissa's challenge of reading a serialized novel. This is The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. This was the group read for last year, and I tried to read it and was loving it, but I just didn't have time for it. And also the edition I was using from my library was terrible and falling apart. I bought my own edition and I'm going to read it. This is another really chunky one. All 3 of these are really chunky. Most of these books are really chunky. Oh dear. But I'm excited for this because I was really enjoying it when I was reading it last year. We'll read the back of this one too, because why not? It doesn't actually give much useful information. So, first, quoting from the book, "A certain class of dishonesty, magnificent in its proportions and climbing into high places," end quote. This was the new metropolitan disease Trollope set out brilliantly to expose in The Way We Live Now. His milieu are the city's financial institutions, London's exclusive West End squares, and drones clubs populated by languorous aristocrats, all offering rich pickings for the unscrupulous speculator, whether in the marriage or the money market. Among the unscrupulous are the hack writer Lady Carberry, her son Felix, and above all, Melmotte, a financier of uncertain origins and Napoleonic ruthlessness, energy, and charm, whose dramatic rise and fall dominates the novel. I'm really excited to get back to this one because I was really loving it. And the depiction of Lady Carberry is actually really helpful for my dissertation because she is a woman writer who is very productive, and Trollope is portraying her as like a bad writer. And so that's interesting for me. So I can technically count this as work. Next up, we move to Roz's challenge, which is to read or watch a work of Victorian drama. So for this, I have The Importance of Being Earnest and Other Plays by Oscar Wilde. I have already read The Importance of Being Earnest and Lady Windermere's Fan. So there are 3 left in here. Salome, A Woman of No Importance, and An Ideal Husband. I am kind of between A Woman of No Importance and An Ideal Husband for this challenge. Not sure which I'm gonna pick up. Maybe I'll pick up both, but I feel like that's being a little too ambitious considering things because of how chunky all those are. but I will definitely be reading one of them. Let me know down in the comments below if you recommend one over the other, an ideal husband or a woman of no importance. I know that they'll be great no matter what because Oscar Wilde is hilarious. And now we move to Kate's challenge, which is to read a work of Victorian literature where religion is a component. And for this, I'm choosing The Daisy Chain by Charlotte Mary Young. I was going to read this last month. I don't remember. I had it in a TBR and I didn't get to it. So I figured this is a good time to do it because I do know that religion plays heavily into it. And I have it on my Kindle, but I will read you off the summary on Goodreads. The Daisy Chain is a domestic story, a novel of female education, and a detailed survey of the controversies and practices of high church Anglicanism in the 19th century. Religion. Its portrayal of the bookish, awkward heroine Ethel May paved the way for stories of literary heroines like Jo March and Anne Shirley, and its emphasis on the domestic life of the May family illuminates the Victorian doctrine of separate spheres, the seemingly contradictory gender politics of the woman question, and the relationship between religion and the rights of women in the 19th century. So, sounds pretty good. Also kind of a chunker, which this edition that it's showing is just under 600 pages. So... if I get to these, I'll be reading a lot of pages in October. So now we move into the Victober adjacent ones. And the first of these is actually another one for the group challenge, and this is to read a work by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So I have read a lot of the Sherlock Holmes books. I've read the first 3 novels, A Study in Scarlet, The Sign of Four, and The Hound of the Baskervilles. I've read, I don't even know how many of the short stories, but I have not read The Valley of Fear, which is the 4th and final novel. So this came out in 1915, so it is actually not Victorian. It is very thoroughly Edwardian, which is why I am putting it in the Victober adjacent category. But I was like, it's close enough. And the summary sounded really good. So I will read that to you. The deadly hand of Professor Moriarty once more reaches out to commit a vile and ingenious crime, but a mole in Moriarty's criminal organization alerts Sherlock Holmes of the evil deed by means of a cipher. When Holmes and Watson arrive at a Sussex manor house, they appear to be too late. The discovery of a body suggests that Moriarty's henchmen have been at their work. But there is much more to this tale of murder than at first meets the eye. Like, it sounds really good. So, Victober adjacent, but still counting for one of the challenges. And I have this on my Kindle as well. I actually have the complete Sherlock Holmes on my Kindle. So, I technically could pick anything for this challenge, but I really want to read this one, and I'm like, yeah, 1915, Victorian. It's close enough, it's fine. Another of my Victober adjacent ones is a nonfiction. This is How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman. So obviously this is a work of nonfiction, and it is talking about just kind of everyday life in the Victorian era. And I've had it on my shelves for a really long time. I've heard that it's amazing, and I really want to get to it this year. And I figured Victober would be a good time since it is about the Victorian period. But if it carries over into nonfiction November, then that's okay. And then the third and final Victober adjacent book is probably the least adjacent of the 3. This is The Flight of Gemma Hardy by Margot Livesey. Livesey? I don't know. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre that was lent to me a year and a half ago? 2 years ago? I don't even know now. So, yeah, that's rather embarrassing. But I am seeing the friend whose book this is at the end of October. So I would really like to get to this. I also figured that it would be good to have a kind of lighter read in between all of those chunky monsters that I just talked about, because I do get burned out if I read too much classics in a row. So, like I said, this is a Jane Eyre retelling. It is a piece of young adult fiction, and I will just read you the summary. Taken from her native Ireland to Scotland in the early 1950s, when her widower father drowns at sea, young Gemma Hardy comes to live with her kindly uncle and his family. But his death leaves Gemma under the care of her resentful aunt, and she suddenly finds herself an unwelcome guest. Surviving oppressive years at a strict private school, Gemma ultimately finds a job as an au pair to the 8-year-old niece of Mr. Sinclair on the Orkney Islands. And here, at the mysterious and remote Blackbird Hall, Gemma's greatest trial begins. So, you can see where it's drawing on Jane Eyre. I figured this will be a good thing to read in between some of these more chunky ones. Bit lighter, bit easier since it's young adult, and then I can give it back to my friend, finally. So, now I want to briefly discuss the group read, which is The Doctor's Wife by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I am not participating in the group read because I literally just read this a month ago, I guess, in August, yeah, I think. It all gets hazy. But yes, I did just read this because I am writing a dissertation chapter on it. But I do feel there is still kind of a way for me to participate in this group read because I will be starting my chapter on The Doctor's Wife in October. So I'm thinking that maybe at the end of the month I can post a video kind of talking about what I'm looking at in The Doctor's Wife, so that I'm still like kind of participating in the group read. Because I'm like, I was kind of bummed out. I was like, oh, I just read this, no! But I needed to read it when I read it because I need to write the chapter. But I thought this would just be a fun way to participate in it. You guys are going to love The Doctor's Wife. It's so much fun. So much fun. Mary Elizabeth Braddon is just so great. So that is my overly ambitious, as always, Victober TBR. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think? What are you reading for Victober? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.